Greetings, colleagues. I'm going to talk about Upshift, which is a program that started in Kosovo just a few years ago. It is primarily seen as an innovation program, but I think it also is one of UNICEF's most pertinent responses to the emerging knowledge on adolescent brain development. And I'll explain why in a few moments, but firstly I'd like to explain how Upshift works. Upshift starts with a local call for self-starting groups of young people between 13 and 18 to come forward with ideas about how they'd like to harness innovation to address social problems within their community. The 10 best ideas are selected by a panel of private and public sector leaders, and they are then in the teams connected to those ideas are each given a mentor, and they're invited to a design thinking workshop in which they hone and develop their ideas. After 3 days of workshop, the 5 best teams are selected and given a small fund, approximately 2,000 euros, to implement their idea. The call is open to young people from all backgrounds. However, there is a special effort taken to attract young people who are affected by poverty, by exclusion, and by adversity. Some of the ideas that have come up as a result of the Upshift have been an app to address eating disorders amongst adolescents, design of special furniture so children with disability can be better included in the classroom, and things like a festival of tolerance in a deeply multi-ethnic and polarized community. But it's not necessarily the ideas themselves, but rather the process that is game-changing in terms of the way that young people see themselves and the way that their community sees their potential. So now I'd like to explain why I think the Upshift is so important in terms of the new evidence on adolescent brain development. So everybody knows now that in early childhood, brain development is most prolific, and best life outcomes are secured when children in very early childhood have what the Harvard Center for the Developing Child calls serve and return parenting. Research at the intersection of neuroscience and psychology is showing that adolescence is perhaps the second most important period of brain development, or rather brain reorganization on the path to adulthood, and that it is very much characterized by emotional spark, social engagement, novelty seeking, and creative exploration. So one psychologist terms these characteristics essence, as you can see on the slide. And essence is potentially very positive for helping children to develop the kind of skills they will need to have successful lives. However, it also can be high risk for children that are affected by poverty, exclusion, adversity, and violence. So evidence-based interventions on adolescents show that best life outcomes are secured by having more of an emphasis on social and emotional development of the brain, developing things like optimism, perseverance, integrity, growth mindset, and really an ethos of public service. And secondly, that interventions on young people have to understand what motivates them. And all of the research tells us that the things that motivate young people are belonging, a sense of belonging or attachment to a group, a sense of autonomy, ability to express freedom, and thirdly, a sense of competence, competence that by learning and by working through challenges, your knowledge will improve, you will improve, and the things that you learn are relevant to you. So if we were to summarize all of that together in one sentence, we could say that collaborative perseverance through a challenge is probably as important in adolescent brain development as serve and return parenting is in early childhood. Unfortunately, in most middle and low-income countries in the world, education systems and non-formal systems for young people do not allow young people to collaborate through challenges. But Upshift does, and that's why it's so pertinent to adolescent brain development. Appeals to governments because governments are increasingly interested in answering the challenge of how do they build a competitive, innovative and entrepreneurial workforce who are also socially conscious and civically engaged. It also appeals to multinational corporations who want to invest in emerging markets but are concerned about the future potential of the workforce in those places. And it also, in fact, appeals to those people who are trying to direct young people or divert young people away from a life of crime or a life of risk, or to protect them from things like grooming or radicalization. And it has an appeal to those as well. There are so many other things that I could say about Upshift, but I only had 5 minutes. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you very much.